Need my heart to be broken open. Maybe I'll love again. Lost myself for a moment. Just to
find... How did I come up with the Broken Open? Well, I kind of wanted to dig a little deeper and talk about things that I had been a little too scared about or just not comfortable with talking about in previous music. I wanted to actually, talk about some mental health stuff, some stuff that has been historically scary for me to talk about in this way, at least in the music. So I wanted to express how I felt about, not necessarily loving myself as much as I should, and feeling like, I'm not good enough all the time. This deep sense of I'm not good enough, this deep sense of sometimes loathing, and just express that, get it out in order to connect with other people, because I know that I'm not the only one who is feeling these things. And I think it's empowering to be able to talk about this stuff, especially, in music, because it reaches a ton of people. I don't know if there's anything impressive. Other than the fact that I was able to be vulnerable and talk about these things. I think that was a challenge for me, and I'm proud of myself for being able to express in that way. But yeah, I remember going into the studio, and I worked with a producer named Matthew Johnston, and I brought in a version of this song, an initial version, and he said, "It's a really great song, but why don't you actually just say what you're trying to say rather than try to be poetic and clever and a wordsmith?" Because I pride myself on that, but sometimes you can just be too clever and then you lose the message. Sometimes you just need to be direct and say what you're actually feeling. So I think I went back to the drawing board, and I came back with these lyrics, and it turned into this song. And I think it's just much more impactful to actually not worry about being clever or poetic and just worry about telling the truth. So I take a lot of pride in that, and I'm glad that we went that direction. Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to write about. It might happen last second. It might be spur of the moment inspiration that just kind of comes through me. I kind of consider myself just a vessel, a conduit, if you will, for inspiration. So half the time I don't even know what I wrote about until the song is done, and I step back and I look at it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand where that was coming from and what that means and what I was processing. But I'm not overly technical when it comes to the songwriting aspects. Well, sometimes I am. I can be technical, but I feel like creatively, when it comes to these types of things, it's better to just kind of come from the heart and let it flow. So that's more or less what it was for this song. It was just me connecting with inspiration and seeing what happens. Yeah, it has been a decade, which is wild to think about. Me as a young man, when I first started this journey, not knowing what I was getting into, all I knew is that I loved making music and I wanted to pursue it as a career, and that nothing lit me up inside and made me feel more joy than writing songs and performing them for people. So I went into it naive and not really knowing what to expect. I did it with my heart. Pretty much every upcoming musician, you kind of have to prove yourself, prove your mettle, and learn how to get back up. So it's really, I take a lot of pride. I'm proud that I'm still here 10 years later, and that I have a fan base, a growing, and that I'm able to make music, and that most important, I'm still excited about it. I'm not jaded by the industry. I'm still as excited as I was when I was 20 years. It's been a long journey, but it's funny because I still feel like I'm just getting started. Even though I released my first album a decade ago, the album that's on the way, to me, really feels like the real introduction, because this is the first time in my career where I feel like I have my legs underneath me. I have my sea legs, so to speak. I've been in the industry long enough where I know how that works, but I know how I know what makes me tick as an artist and a human being. So I'm able to present that self confidently now. So this is in many ways like an introduction, and I'm super excited to share that with people. It might be just the fact that I'm still here. you know, that I have the stamina, that I have the longevity, the wherewithal to endure everything that the music industry will throw at you, because it's not easy. So probably that, the fact that I'm still here, I'm making music, that I'm still excited by it, that it still fills me with joy, that's impressive to me. And then the fact that I've nurtured this healthy but growing fan base, this audience that is loyal, that they've grown with me during that 10 years too. And I know I don't have the biggest fan base in the world, but like I have people that really care about what I do, and that means a lot to me. And I think that's pretty cool. I've used this phrase before, and I think it's still kind of fitting. My music to me feels like, it feels mature. It feels like not old, but like mature. And I think I've said it before as grown folk music. It feels like grown folk music, like you're an adult. In that, you know, I've lived a little bit of a life now to kind of go through some things and experience growing pains, experience heartache, recover from heartache. Like I feel like I know a little bit about life now. Not that I'm this old man with, you know, who's seen it all. I'm still a young person. But I think that comes across in my music. I hope it does, at least a little bit of maturity, and that I hope that there's some underlying wisdom in the music that people sense. Because I feel like, though I have a lot to learn still, most definitely there's some wisdom laced within my songs if you really look hard enough and listen hard enough. So yeah, I describe it as grown folk music. No, I describe it as mature. Sure, yeah, I'm gonna release a new album. I haven't announced that anywhere on social media, but I've started to talk about it. So yeah, I'm excited. I have an album coming out in August, and I think Broken Open is a good precursor to that album. It is very mental health heavy and self-love heavy and very introspective and personal and vulnerable. So that's on the way. Super excited about it. And there's going to be so much more happening, more shows, hopefully some international shows in 2023. That's the plan. There's a long list of artists that I'd love to work with.
I get that.
Yeah, there's so many, but number one would probably be John Mayer, because his music really inspired me and influenced me to write in the first place, just to sit down and try to write songs, try to perform. I was really inspired by John Mayer and D'Angelo. But so I'd love to work with them, but I'd also love to work with Maggie Rogers. I love Maggie Rogers. I love Tom Misch. I love Billie Eilish, actually. I don't know why I said actually, like that's surprising. She's amazing. Yeah, probably those people. They're top of the list for sure. One thing that I would love to do in the future is learn more instruments. I'm a guitar player, and you know, there's always room to grow and learn on the guitar, but I would love to learn how to play piano and start to incorporate that into both my songwriting and my live show. So I'd love to make some room in my life to really learn piano. I think that'd be brilliant. I think it's such an emotional instrument too. You're able to, I think it would bring a lot out of my songwriting, because you're able it's so more emotive. There's so many, just the way that it sounds and the notes and the way that the notes are set up, it's completely different from guitar. And I would just love to experiment on that, and several other instruments, to be honest with you. But let's just start with one and say that I would love to start to incorporate the piano into my life a little bit more. There's a movie called Semi-Pro, which is it's a comedy about this group of ragtag basketball players who are trying to make it in the NBA. And that's my movie, because It's about it's about these people who are trying to work hard and trying to build themselves up, and they're struggling and they're going through the grind of it all, and they eventually get to where they're meant to go. So I'm going to say semi-pro. That movie represents my career, because in many ways I've done this semi-professional thing where I'm like, I'm good and people know me in Canada, but I'm trying to, make headway elsewhere in the world. So I feel like I'm not quite there yet. So we'll go with semi-pro. To my fans in Taiwan, I would just like to say thank you so much for listening to the song Broken Open. Thank you for making room in your life for my music. It means the world to me that you care. So just thank you, and I wish you health and prosperity and love.
Need my heart to be broken open. Maybe I'll love again. Lost myself for a moment.